Hi everybody, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Missy's Imaginings. I have a couple little quick things to show you that I found to encourage your creativity, and then we're going to start in on a project. So the first couple things is I noticed while I was at Walmart, I found some hair clips that have a lot of jewels in them, and they're small, so they'll work for doll things because they are pretty heavy, like metal almost, or really heavy duty plastic. I'll have to wait till I get it out of here. But they're really cool, and they weren't super expensive, but I thought they'd be fun for some of those wigs that are really long if you want to flip the hair around and have a good grip on it. So they have kind of like a pinky width circle. When it closes, it is tighter than on my finger, but anyway, they're kind of a rounded clip instead of just the flat clip, and it has little jewels on it, which is kind of cool. And they kind of look like, I don't know if they look like little butterflies or if they're supposed to be a blossom, but they're really cool. So I found those, and those are at Walmart. These four are all different colors, so if you wanted two that matches, you'd have to get two packages. But I thought they were kind of cool, and they have kind of that medieval, I don't know, older look to them. So I found those. So just every once in a while when you're shopping out and about, go look at the hair stuff, because you'll never know if they'll have some really cool small things that you can use. Also, I was surprised. I found these brushes at Dollar Tree. So for $1, and on a lot of my brushes, I like to use them in a way that I really don't want to pay a lot of money for. And the reason being is when I have a brush to do face-up work, I'm probably rougher than I should be, but I'll spray with some kind of a sealant, and that gives kind of tooth, so that your pastels will stick. But then I like to use a brush that has the white stiff bristles that are normally, you think of using them with oil paints, and I like those because I can, what's a better word, I can scrub. I can really scrub the pastels in and blend them with that stiffer kind of a brush. I have one, oh, here's one. And so it's just a white bristle. Normally, like I say, they're very common with oil paint, and I can really scrub, and I have a couple that I've actually worn down to where it was almost to the metal. But I really like the texture and the stiffness so that I can direct where I want those pastels to go, where a lot of the softer sable brushes didn't seem to put the color into the sealant the way that I wanted. It would just, it'd brush on and then brush off and it'd be gone. But with these kind of brushes, I can kind of really scrub it in there and blend my colors, and then if I wear it down, I can throw it away because it didn't cost very much. And I actually found this little package at Dollar Tree, and there's 3 sable like watercolor brushes in there, but that's all right. And it says it has an acrylic handle, but there's 4 of those little oil brushes in there. So I thought that was a good deal, for the ones that I want to use on doll things, not counting these, even if they weren't there, it's only 25 cents a brush. So anyway, that was a newer find. They've been getting more craft things in. So check out there for some of your basic things and tools that you might want to use, but you don't want to spend a lot of money. And then, once again, I don't know if this is everywhere, but at all our Walmart, back behind the fabric section, they have bins that are on the wall. And in the little bins, there's all this pre-wrapped, pre-cut fabric. And it is, for example, 2 yards for $3. And this is a really cool textured fabric for like sweaters. And of course, I did the purple one back here. I hope that'll be in the screen. And that was really fun. It's a real loose weave. It made a perfect oversized sweater. And then I saw this and I thought, well, I've got to make a few of these. So I really like this, and it's 2 yards. That's going to give a lot of doll clothes for $3. $3. So I got this one. Then they also had, look at this, a gray variegated loose weave, which is very similar to the purple one, but it's just in grays. So it's just that really nice, soft, sweatery fabric. And who knows, it's 2 yards for $2. Maybe I'll make something for me. I don't know. Then the last one I picked up was 4 yards for $4. 4 yards! That's $1 a yard. And this is a stretch knit, which is, and let's see if I can. Ah, there we go. It worked easier than I thought it would. This is almost like a stone wash or tie-dye. I don't know what you're going to call it. But I like the print. And I want to use it for pants and t-shirts even, but like harem pants or sweatpants and t-shirts. But I love the fabric. I love the gradient in there and the blue-gray color. So 4 yards for $4. I'm getting way too much fabric. So anyway, check Walmart. Just go in the back of the fabric department behind all the bolts and see if you have that. They also have on the wall, I must have opened that other one, packages of plain cotton fabric. So they got really cleaned out when everybody was making a lot of masks. But I was in there when I got these and I noticed they actually had a package of solid black. And so I snagged that because they didn't even have any black cotton or black muslin on the bolts yet. I couldn't find any. So they actually got the little pre-packaged ones, which the price isn't horrible. And when I couldn't find it anywhere else, I bought one of those. But I must have opened it and used it on something. So anyway, so check those places for economic fabrics. And in the bins, you never know what you're going to find. The purple that I used for that sweater, never seen it again. I've went back and looked a couple times. These 2 knits, I've never seen them again. So you just kind of have to check regularly. And when they restock the bins, get in there and see what they have. Because it's really, really cheap fabric. But they're cool, and especially for doll things, if you get something that's already a really loose weave, it just makes for a really nice oversized sweater. And then when you're sewing it, on your edges, if you don't have a serger machine, then use a zigzag on your seam allowance to kind of help that and keep it from fraying. And anyway, that's a fun way to get some really nice fabrics, and you can make something for yourself as well. So anyway, that's what we had to show you for some ideas. Let's see, I'll throw these over here. Let's see if I can get them to, oh, maybe not. And then for a project, someone asked me a while back on some ideas on how to sew the flared coat for Ellowyne or an MSD size doll. And I thought, well, I already had it cut out and we're finishing up MSD month, which was July, and now it's August, but I already had it cut out. So I thought I'll show you how to sew that coat, because there are a couple things that I like to do and a couple little tricks that I kind of discovered by accident that I'm happy to share with you in case you would like to try it. And this pattern can be a little tricky if you don't know how to put it together. So we'll put this together. It's going to be in black and white, kind of a cool little brocade print onto a black pattern. So I like that, with red polka dot. So there's the red polka dot. And the little trick that we're going to share is kind of an easy, quick way to make like faux piping. I don't know how else you would say it. So if you buy piping, here's some green piping, and it's pinned on here. Yes, it is. It has the piping is like a little rounded edge, so it's just like the word implies. A pipe is, you know, a round cylindrical tube that holds liquid, usually. So piping is a round finished edge that you can put on, you know, necklines or sleeves, and it's made by sewing fabric over a cord of some type, so that the roundness of the cord is your piping, and then the allowance there is sewn between two layers of fabric or on the back of fabric, so that your fabric would go up flush to it. So if you sew it on the edge of your fabric, we'll just place it here, there we go, it would look like this. There we go. So that your piping is the finishing on the edge of your fabric rather than a hem. It becomes the hem, and then you have that finished look. Well, by accident, when I was making some of my coats, I was going to hem the sleeve, and the way I did it ended up looking like piping, but I didn't have to mess with trying to sew in piping, because it can be hard if you're not just sewing it in right on top and you don't have the right kind of foot for it and all that stuff. It's hard to get it to stay in place, and I've kind of battled with it several times and thought, no, I don't like it. And then I discovered a really easy way to make it look like piping, or at least a little edge on what you're doing. It kind of depends on the thickness of your fabric, how round the piping will be, but it's just a quick and easy, fun way to get that aesthetic on what you're doing without messing with an actual piece of piping that you have to pin and place in between layers. So we're going to do that on this little coat. So we'll go ahead and swipe out the camera so that you can see what I'm doing. And just because I know some of you are thinking, I don't want to watch a whole video just for that part, we'll do that first. So that way, if you want to see how I do that and see if it might be fun for you to try, we'll do that at the beginning, and then you can turn the video off if you want to. So, so there you go. We'll switch up the camera and start working on a jacket with a quick way to do a piping look on your jacket. Well, at least on the sleeves. So we'll do that. As promised, before we even look at the rest of the pattern pieces, I'm going to show you the little step I use to make fake piping. So what you want to do is take the little facing for the sleeve and the actual sleeve, and this is like the world's easiest thing to do. So the first thing we're going to do is, with a 1/4 inch seam, we're going to sew this together, right sides together. So that's all you do. And it's real short, and I've got cotton here, so I don't really even need to pin. I'm just going to go ahead and sew it together. Oh, my machine's making fun noises. I think it needs a servicing, and I've got a belt that decides to slip every once in a while. Okay, so I'm going to take and trim off my thread, and I've just did a serged edge on my fabric, so I'm not going to actually hem that because I don't want there to be more bulk in hemming, because it just creates another layer of fabric. So I'm going to trim those little ends. Alright, so here's what I do. So here we have that 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you want the sleeve to be longer, you can simply sew closer to the edge of the fabric, and that would give you more length to your actual sleeve, which I could have done and just didn't even think about it. So now I'm going to trim a little under 1/8 of an inch away from my seam. There we go. And that creates a little bit of bulk right here. And now we're going to wrap the fabric, but here's what we do. We're going to keep this, and you can press it. Maybe I should do that first, but I don't have a hot iron. So you want the seam allowance to go toward the seam facing, and you're simply going to wrap the facing around that seam allowance, like so, and then you're going to sew it down right along the edge of the black fabric with the black thread so it doesn't show, and ta-da! You've got piping on the edge of your sleeve. How simple is that? It's just using a little bit of that edge. Now some of this will be in the seam allowance, but it doesn't really matter. It's just facing, and it's just so that you have a finished edge showing on the inside of your sleeve. But that's all there is to it. It's super simple, and I was working with some of my faux leather fabrics, and because they're very thick, I was going to simply have a facing on the fabric, and because it was so thick, it kind of rolled up on me, and I ended up looking at it saying, oh, I like that. It looks like piping. So that's all there is to it. So then you simply take your machine, and since I can feel it's in there, let's see, because I want it to be kind of tight around the, there we go. And even though I didn't press it, I think it'll be fine. And then you can adjust, you know, the thickness, but pull it snug. I'm just going to take my little seam. Got a thread. And my foot doesn't always want to stay up either. Poor old machine. Okay, so now I'm going to sew very close to the piping, but not on the piping. I'm sorry for the noise. There we go. Sew that down. There we go. And there you have it. That's all it is. And if you want, there's probably another way you could sew it down and not even worry about having it show, but then I'll go ahead and when it's closed, it'll be, there we go, it'll look like that. So there we go. That's all there is to it. Once you have the hem done, there's a couple ways that you can fit the sleeve into the jacket because it's a puff sleeve. So the first and easiest is to just simply base along the top edge, do 2 lines, and gather it to fit. That's the easiest way. But there are lines on the pattern where you can add pleats. So to add the pleats, if you take the 2 outside lines of each pleat, fold together, and then take the fold towards the center on the outside. There we go. And that just means that the fold of the center of the pleat is right here, and it went to the center of the shoulder. Then do the same thing, take those and fold those together so they match, and then that folded fabric you're going to put towards the center, so it's going to line up here. And I know it's hard on this printed fabric to see it. Let's see here, we can get it pinned in place. So it ends up being a pleat right in here. There we go. And then on the inside, it looks like the double tuck outside pleat. But I found that it still doesn't fit very well, so I'm going to go ahead and add one more pleat. So about the same distance as my other pleats, I'm going to fold. How do I explain this again? I'm just going to bring another pleat that's about the same distance as those other ones, and I'm going to repeat that process just to bring one more little tuck on each side. And then on this one, I'm going to just put my thumbnail down about, because I can see where this edge of that pleat is, so about 3/16 from that, I'm going to place my nail and fold against my nail and bring that over so it's about the same distance. I'm just going to add that in and pin it down, and then I'll go ahead and baste on the seam line, and then I might have a little bit of ease to do, but that way, instead of having just random gathers along the top, I have very uniform pleats that will fit into my coat. and then once it's fitted, it would look like, there we go, you can see, kind of gives that puff a little bit more definition. So I'm going to go ahead and pleat the tops of these sleeves, and then that's how I'll fit it into the jacket. Okay, I think I have all these in frame, so you can see the pattern pieces. There's quite a few. It's not a super difficult little coat, but there are a lot of pieces. So what we'll kind of look at is how the lining pieces correspond to the coat pieces. Now on the pattern, it's been on the website for quite a while, and on the pattern you'll notice there are little stars on sides of the pieces that indicate which piece is sewn to which piece, but I thought I'd just lay it out here. So for these, they're all laid out from front to back, and then of course it would continue on the other side, which means this piece and this piece, here we go, if I can get one apart, are going to be sewn together like so, and then this one will be sewn here, then the next one, then the next one, and the same thing would happen on the coat. Now I recommend that it's kind of a complicated thing, but but you have to get the pieces sewn together for the back and the front so that you can get the shoulders put together. So I wouldn't just start and sew everything together. I would sew the side pieces of the front all together for each side of the front, then do all the back pieces together, and the same up here, because if you sew them all together, it's going to be a little bit harder to fit things in when you haven't done the shoulders yet, because to put the collar and stuff, all that in, I like to sew the shoulders of the front and the back together first. So the main thing is to avoid sewing the actual side seam under the arm together. You don't want to sew that together yet for the lining or for the coat. That's just kind of the way I do it, because later you're also going to have the back facing, which is going to have to be sewn to the lining. So when you start out, have your front pieces together and your back pieces together. Go ahead and sew those all together on the sides that match for all the back pieces of the lining and the coat, and then the front pieces each side of the lining and the front pieces each side of the coat. That way you're basically going to end up with 3 coat pieces, 2 fronts and a back, and 3 facing pieces, 2 fronts and a back. That way it'll be easier when we start putting the actual coat together. But I just wanted to give you a heads up. Don't just start sewing all the pieces together, because then it makes it a little bit harder to assemble the coat and get the facing in properly and then put the collar in. So that's kind of how we're going to start. I'm going to do the fronts and the backs, but I'm not sewing that side seam for either the coat pieces or the lining pieces. And I'll probably have to switch the thread a little bit, because I don't want black thread on my polka dots, so it'll be a little bit of switching up thread as well. But I'll start with the coat and get those pieces together. We're not going to worry about the back facing yet. That's not really coming into play yet. Also on our collar, I'm going to go ahead and take the collar and put it right sides together, and I'm going to sew up one side or one end of the collar across the top edge and down the other side. Then I'll trim that seam allowance to about a little over 1/8 of an inch, because this fabric tends to fray a little bit when you're working with it. It's kind of porous, so I won't just trim 1/8. It'll be a little bit more than 1/8. Then I'll turn it right side out, and then I'm going to baste along the bottom edge of the outside once it's put together, and then I'm going to just snip about 1/4 inch apart to that basting or stay stitching, either way you want to sew. Just gives kind of some flexibility and still strength here, so I can move it around, but it's going to keep that collar together the way that I want it to be. So I'll be putting the collar together as well. The last little items before I actually start putting the coat together is there's two little, well, there's one belt piece that looks like this, but you need 4 pieces, so that I will put right sides together on the belt pieces like so, and I'll be sewing around the edge, around the point and back, but I'm going to leave this end open so that I can turn it. And once it's turned, I will top stitch around the right side, and that's just going to give the pieces in the back. It's a little faux belt that goes in the back of the coat, so I'm going to go ahead and get those put together as well. So that's my prep sewing as such, and we'll go ahead and speed up the camera and get through that much of the process. Here's the back, so all the pieces of the back are sewn together, and then my 2 front pieces are here. So now what I want to do is I want to finish these edges, because this fabric frays really easily. So I'm going to go ahead and run all of these seams through the serger just to finish out those edges so they'll be nice and finished. So I'm going to go ahead and get that part done, but I wanted to pop in just since these are done and point out, if you notice, I did not pin any of these pieces because the flares are the opposite of one another. So I take these pieces and they're going to fit together, but when I lay this on top of the other, you'll notice they go completely the opposite direction. So I don't pin that, I just start my seam, and then as I'm sewing, I slowly bring those fabrics together so that it's almost like, and I've said this before, like sewing a straight line into my machine, rather than trying to pin all this curve, which gets pins in the way, they pull on the fabric, they can put pleats in your fabric. So if you just start at the shoulder, get your back tack done, so that'll hold your fabric together, then slowly as you move the fabric through the machine, go ahead and bring those edges together. And then once you get to about here, you can see how it just matches up. And so then you'll just come straight down the edge. But it just makes it a lot easier to sew curves together if you don't try to pin everything first, because then you've got all this bumpy, rumply mess, and I don't like trying to do it that way. So that's why, as you saw, I didn't pin anything. I just started at the top and slowly brought them together, and they end up fitting really well, and there were no problems. So that's how I put those together. I'm going to go ahead and serge those seam allowances, and then I will go ahead and put the camera back on while I put the facing pieces together. In looking at my pieces, I realized that I cut this one for the facing by mistake. You don't need this for facing because this piece takes the place of that space, and so I cut one of these by mistake. I didn't need that one. So for the facing, you just need the very front piece, and then the side front, which we'll put together, and then your back pieces will be a total of 5, the center back, and then 2 on each side. So now we'll go ahead and change up the thread to red, and go ahead and put these together and serge those seams as well, and then sew our little ties so they'll be ready for the back of the coat. So that's what we're going to do next. Alright, so here's our pieces. We have one of the fronts, the other front, and the back of the coat. Then we have the collar all put together. I have the back facing, and I finished the outside edge of the facing. So with our facing, this is why I didn't put the sides together. The back facing needs to be attached to the front facing at the shoulders. So this is the neckline, and this is the neckline, and this is the neckline. So this is how these pieces are going to fit together. Then once these are put together, then I'll go ahead and do the side seams. But if you do the side seams first, it's really easy to get confused and to get the facing put on incorrectly. So I'm going to go ahead and do those first because it's all laid out here. Then on my jacket, I'm going to put together the fronts to the back at the shoulder. Let's see, and I got to get it down here where you can see it in the camera. So I'm going to put the front to the back at the shoulder seams, like so, like that. So that's going to be my next steps, is to get the shoulders put together on the facing, then put the sides together, and then put the shoulders together on the coat. So my lining is all put together, and the coat pieces are all sewn together. We just haven't done the side seams yet. Sorry, my voice got all froggy all of a sudden. But the next step is going to be, I'm going to stay stitch around the neck of the coat and around the neck of the lining to give a little bit security. And then I'm going to snip around the curves, snips about a 1/4 inch apart from each other down to the stay stitching, which will be on the seam line. Then I am going to pin the collar with whichever, I usually look for the most decorated side to be inside because that's what flips out. So I'll have to decide which one I like the best. But I'm going to lay the collar in, and this will be able to straighten out better once I have that stay stitching and snip it. And then I have the center snipped in my collar to match the center back seam. And I'll start at the center, and then I'll pin that in place, and then I'll make sure it's the same length from each side so that I'll know it's centered with the jacket. So I think I had the wrong seam. Oh, there we go. I guess there's not a seam in the back. I'll maybe put a little snip in the center of the back so I can make sure that collar is centered. Once that's in place, with the right sides together, the collar is going to be sandwiched between the right sides of the coat and the facing. I'm going to pin the facing on. I'm only going to sew across the neckline. So that's all I'm going to sew, and then I'll turn it right side out and get it all pressed. Once that's pressed, my next step is to put in the sleeves. And so I'm not worrying about sewing down the sides of the front yet. I'm only doing the neckline. Normally when I do a coat or a shirt or whatever, I go, you know, up the front and around the neck and down the other front. But right now we're not doing the front edges, we're only doing the neckline. So that will be our next steps, is to sandwich in our collar and to sew that collar in place, sandwiched between the right sides of the coat and the facing. Now I have my pleated sleeves, and I had the basting across the top so I could just give them a little bit of ease ability. And I'm going to go ahead and with right sides together, I'm going to match the center of the sleeve with the shoulder seam, and then I'll pin from the outside and ease that into the actual armhole. And so I'll kind of, you know, unpull a little bit as I need to fit that in. So for placement of my pleats, I want to make sure that the center of my pleat is on the shoulder seam. So I pin that in place first just to make sure it's placed correctly. And then I do, like normally, like in other videos you've probably seen, that I start from the outside of the sleeve and the outside of the garment. I get my basting thread where I can get a hold of it, and I start and I match up the side edge of the sleeve and the side edge of the garment. And it's pretty much perfect, which is kind of nice when they work out that way. And so then I just pin it into place. And I want to make sure that I kind of get the raw edge of the fabric together, because that ensures that your sleeve hangs correctly. And then you want to make sure when you're pinning that you're pinning inside the sleeve or the seam allowance and to that actual stay stitching seam. It helps for the flow through the machine if your pins don't come farther down into your fabric, because the farther down you anchor your fabric, the more chance you have to create a pleat somewhere in here in the side. And so you don't want that to be pleated, you want it to fall real flat. And so you can see on this side I don't have any pleats on the side of my garment, and a lot of that can be avoided if you're making sure to keep your pins as close to this actual stay stitch seam line as possible, and then inside the seam allowance, and it just kind of helps that. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to finish pinning this, sew it in, and do the other sleeve and sew it in. At this point, all of our pieces are in somehow, in some way attached, though the coat isn't finished yet. So before we do our last bit of sewing to finish up the actual coat, we need to place in the little belt pieces. Now this is totally up to you. It's whatever aesthetic you like. They're cut at a little bit of an angle so that they would fall down like this and crisscross, and then put a button right here where they crisscross. So that's what I'm going to do. But if you want, you can actually put them together with like 3 buttons and just have it hanging loosely. But I'm going to go ahead and have them crisscross like this. So I'm going to baste right where the side seam on the back comes down and then cuts back at an angle. I'm going to place that little belt right in there and just baste inside the seam allowance to hold that in place. So then when I do my actual side seam, this will be sewn in. So that's what I'm going to do next. And then once that's basted in place, I'm going to turn the coat inside out, and I'm going to make sure that the lining is totally free from the coat. There we go. So we're going to get the lining out of the way. I'm going to start at the hem of the sleeve, and I'm going to sew to the underarm and then back down the side seam. And I'm going to have the seam allowance for the shoulder facing toward the sleeve. So that's going to be my next step to actually assemble the coat, but I'm keeping the lining or facing free from the coat at this point. So I'm just doing the side seams like this for under the sleeve, the underarm, then back down to the hem. So once I have the underarm and side seam done, I went ahead and ran it through the serger to finish off that seam, so everything's nice and finished. Now the next thing to do, since the coat is essentially done, but I haven't turned it right side out yet, I'm going to make sure my sleeves are out of the way, and I'm just going to use a little, well, it's not a little one, but let's see, just a medium-sized safety pin. Here we go. Or you could use a straight pin, but I don't want it to come back and pin me. So there we go. I'm going to pin those up and out of the way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually attach the lining to the coat. So now I'm bringing the right side of the lining to the right side of the coat, and my sleeves are back here out of the way. And now I'm going to start at one edge of the neckline, and I'm going to sew down this front edge, and then I'm going to sew the facing to the hem of the coat, matching all the seams all along the flared hem. This little round hem is so cute, right? So I'm going to sew all the way around here, and then I'm going to sew back up the other side. So I'll get that all pinned in place and sew down one side around the hem and back up to the top. So that's what we're doing next. So here's the coat turned all right side out. The next step, of course, will be to iron all of these edges so that they lay nice and flat, and then that gives the flared little coat the fun contrast of the facing on the lapels, and it creates the piping on the sleeves, and then as you can see, it shows in the flip of the coat. So, and then of course the back little belt would look like this. When you press this, if you want it to have that piping look, you can press so that just a little bit of that red shows, or you can just tuck it up evenly. It's totally up to you, whatever your preference is. But anyway, that's how we put together the little flared coat. The next steps after it's ironed, of course, is to put on the buttons and snaps. And I usually like to finish it with red buttons just so that it's contrasting, and then I'll probably put a black button here, or like a little fancy button that looks like a bow or something. I'm not sure. I'll have to see what I have. But then this jacket, the pattern is on the website. Also included in the pattern is a sheath dress, so you can make that sheath in black or white or red, like with this outfit. So any of those would be a fun color for the sheath, just kind of whatever you want your look to be like. So that's how we put together the jacket. We'll come back when I get all the handwork done and the ironing done and the buttons on. And oh, and then also this facing, I like to tack it inside at the shoulder seam because that'll hold that down, and then flatten it out, of course, when you have it all pressed, and tack it down just on these seam allowances from the seams of putting all those panels together, and that will hold your facing down so it's not flipping up all the time. So just hand tack that in place. There we go. If you want, you can also take this little side of the facing and tack it to this little seam allowance here. That'll help keep that laying, you know, inside, so when you fold over that lapel, it's not going to want to flip out. So, flip out. That's funny. So anyway, that's how we put together this little jacket, and we'll go ahead and come back when it's all finished and ready to be modeled. And here is the little coat all finished. I happen to have a little red and black and white dress for Prudence anyway, so I thought, okay, well, I'll just put the coat over that, at least the colors match. So here's the little coat. I did go ahead and tack in the lining at every seam allowance just to kind of help it stay in place. And then I also tacked the lapels open on the top and the bottom just to give that little contrast. But here's what the jacket looks like. We'll spin her around. Oh, we'll move her hair. There you go, Prudence. So here's the little belt, and that's the flare of the coat. It's just a little flared coat. And this fabric is very stiff, so it makes the flare really stand out. So if you use, oh, sorry about that. So if you use softer fabric, it's going to fall a little bit better probably. So, and this one's kind of bunched underneath there. But then the lining is all polka dotted. So that's how we put together this little pieced jacket. There's lots of pieces, so be patient. And if it's your first run and you're not sure about it, just use a fabric to practice first before you cut your nice fabric. I was very fortunate to find this black and white. I just thought it was really cute, and so I had to snag that. But this is what the little jacket looks like when it's finished. Also, what you can do if you're just really into embellishments and more hand sewing is I had some little white silk ribbon roses, and I thought about putting them there, but after this week at work, my hands are just killing me. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do as little handwork as possible on this one. So sorry that we didn't embellish a little bit more, but there we go. We do have the little contrasting button on the back. So on this little jacket, the contrasting lapels will have to do. So there we go. That's the little jacket, the little pieced coat, and how to put it together. The pattern is already on the website at Missy'sImaginings.com. Just go ahead and make your way to the free stuff page and search down through those PDF listings. Click on it, open, print, and save, and there you go. You're ready to sew. See you next time. Bye.